Hi, this is LaShonda from Cleveland, Ohio, and you are listening to Scandal Water,
where the tea is hot and the conversation lively.
Your hosts, Candy
And Ashley,
will discuss a peculiar story somehow related to the entertainment industry. This podcast might not change the world, but it just might satisfy your thirst for an intriguing tale.
Oh, it's that time of day. Tune in and hear what the ladies say. It's time to bend your ear when the silver screen appears. Stories about the stage and screen and everything in between. So come on and join the fun. The curtain opens in 3, 2, 1.
Good morning, Ashley.
good morning.
This is going to be so fun. I cannot.
You are very excited.
I am. This episode that we're getting ready to head into, I knew I would like it, but I did
You
not
really liked
realize
it?
how much fun I ended up having with
Okay.
this.
I don't know what this one is.
Well, you are about to have some fun yourself because
I love a good time.
guess what?
What?
Here's the opening question.
Oh, you're shaking your hands. You're like, get ready for it.
What are a few of your favorite ABBA songs?
Oh my goodness.
Wait, don't tell me.
Don't tell you. All right,
Sing
I won't.
them.
Oh. Okay. Dancing Queen, young and sweet, only 17. And then, what's another one? The Fernando one. I like that one.
Can you hear the drums,
Yes,
Fernando?
Fernando.
I can't sing.
I like a lot of their stuff.
I know. If you change your
Oh, yeah.
mind.
I'm the first in line. Honey, I'm still free. Take a chance on me. Take a chance.
Yes, yes. I'm telling you, we had decided together that we would do ABBA.
Yeah, but I didn't know when or what.
Right, exactly. So this is a surprise to you, but I got so caught up in this.
Their music is infectious and wonderful.
It really is.
And the best.
It is. I ended up, Kirk and I were driving somewhere one day and he did not sign on for this. I just suddenly started playing song after song
Well, you know,
after song.
they've been in my mind since you did the MTV. I think it was the MTV episode a while back. And I was talking to you about the music videos that ABBA did and how weird they were. So I fell into this rabbit hole of playing all these ABBA things. And I was like, I really like ABBA. I think we should do ABBA one day. And so this is sort of like when this topic came up and we were talking about people who had broken up. I was like, ooh, ABBA. For sure.
Yeah. And I've had a lot of fun watching those videos because I think we said this back in that MTV episode that they might seem a little
Weird.
abstract,
Weird.
yes, or odd to us now, but they were forerunners. They were
Yeah.
experimenters back in the day. And so some of
Did
the
you ever
things
find the one with the snowman? I could never remember which one it was. There's something where they were singing with the snowman.
you actually showed me
I
that
did.
one.
I found it.
You
I wonder
found
what
it
it
that
was.
day. I can't recall which song it was. I did not
So odd.
watch it in this particular
Okay.
research. I saw a lot of videos and that was not one of them.
Okay.
But oh man, did I have fun with those outfits and those hairstyles and the dance moves.
Yes.
And then some of the like you said it before, the way the filmography happened where with faces blending together and
Look off into the middle foreground.
is amazing. Well, yes, today we are going to be talking about ABBA. The theme for the month, of course, is breaking up is hard to do. So we are going to dig into breakups, of course, but we're also going to be honoring this really amazing band. But with the theme in mind, I thought I would start with this short clip.
It was not just music that originally drew these four together.
It all started with us being two couples who were going on vacations and singing together, but not having the idea to form a group.
They took the first letters of their first names, Agneta, Benny, Bjorn, and Annie Fried, and called themselves by that now famous acronym.
So that was a clip when Bjorn and Benny were being interviewed for a CBS Good Morning talk show.
I always wondered what it stood for.
Yes,
ABBA.
yes. But what I really loved was you heard him say they didn't start out to make a band. They were just two couples who were naturally hanging out and
Going on
singing
vacation together.
and going on vacation, and then it turned into ABBA. And I think that that's important to think about because then what is the impact or what is the implication when you start with two couples hanging out and then couples start breaking up later?
You got to pick sides.
Yeah, so I thought that was really interesting, a nice way to begin. And I will tell you, we are going to obviously dig into what happened with them that led to the breakup and how it played out after that. But we're also going to go ahead and talk about them as a band because
They're amazing.
They are amazing. And I know you love dates and
I do.
significant,
I do.
like momentous occasions. Guess what?
What?
This is the 50th anniversary of the event that most people widely regard as
Really?
now they were already a band, but it was 50 years ago this year that this, I'm not going to tell you what it is right now. This is the teaser. It's coming later.
Okay.
But something happened that most people recognize as the event that launched them internationally, that set them off on that path to superstardom.
Superstardom is right.
So 50 years ago.
50. I've got it in
How
my
about
head.
that?
Cool. That's cool. I like that.
know. I knew you would love it. So let's first start. Let's share our background with ABBA. We always like to do that.
Oh, golly. My mom loved them, played them a lot. When Mamma Mia came out, we watched that film. I had that disco tape that I told you about that I loved, and I listened to them. I don't know. I just loved them. They just they're infectious.
Yes, I like
And
the
happy.
word. Yes, they, which is funny because so many of their songs are sort of melancholy or a little sad. But when I think about them, I
think happy.
always think upbeat, happy. The word infectious is great, joyful. It is so
Their
hard.
harmonies are really good, too.
Yes, they're just beautiful.
You would
And-
almost think that they were family. Like instead of just being two friend groups, that they would be sisters and brothers because their voices blend like they were meant to be.
Perfectly. And this to me is such a compliment to them. Kirk and I have been married for a very long time, and I am not lying to you when I tell you I'm not sure. No, I take that back. One time I can recall ever hearing him sing where I could hear his
Really?
voice.
Really?
He is not a singer.
Yeah.
He is not a dancer. He's not a fan of like musicals and that type of thing. And so one of my biggest memories, we saw Mamma Mia, the play, many years ago. My husband was standing up along with everybody else in that audience, singing along.
love
Couldn't hear
it.
his actual voice,
Sure.
but he was singing along
Yeah.
and dancing. That is how
That's wonderful.
it was. And I'm telling you, I still remember that feeling at the end of that when we were all singing and dancing together, and it was just a beautiful, joyous moment.
I
well,
love
more than
that.
a moment. It went on for a while.
It was a concert.
But I think that's how I think of ABBA. I think,
They bring joy.
they do. And you just can't sit still. When they're playing those fun songs, you can't sit still. You have to move. We are going to go ahead and start with some of their background, but I want to make sure I don't forget to do this. I want to give a shout out to this Australian news channel 7 that did a spotlight episode back in 2017. It's on YouTube under the title Rare ABBA Interview. It's about 35 minutes long, and it was super cool. They talked to, they had interviews with the ABBA members. They went places. They showed footage.
The men and the women?
I'm trying to recall. I've seen so many now. I'm trying to
Okay.
recall if the ladies were on that particular one because I'm not exaggerating when I tell you I've probably seen 15 now.
It was
But
probably pretty fun research, though,
it
right?
really was. It really was. But this was a very good interview. So I want to make sure I give them a shout out. But I learned so much that I never knew. I had no idea about the background of these 4, they call them Swedish superstars. So here you go. According to the ABBA website, in June of 1966, Bjorn Ulvaeus met Benny Andersson for the first time. Bjorn was a member of the Hootenanny Singers, which was a very popular folk music group.
That's a fun name.
Yeah. While Benny played keyboards in Sweden's biggest pop group of the 1960s, the Hep Stars. Side note, I'm pulling out of the quote for a second. I saw in multiple sources, they said the Hep Stars were so popular that they were often referred to as the Swedish Beatles.
Oh.
So these fellas were both doing really, really well,
On
right?
their own, yeah.
And as soon as they met, they became friends. So moving back into this quote, the pair wrote their first song together just a few weeks later, and by the end of the decade, they had established a regular partnership as composers. By that time, Benny had left the Hep Stars, while the Hootenanny Singers only existed in the recording studio. The Hootenanny Singers released their records on the Polar Music record label owned by Stig Anderson, who was to become ABBA's manager. Stig also contributed lyrics to many ABBA hits during the first years of the group's career. So basically, these two fellas are already
Established.
and they're
Okay.
doing really well. Surprise, surprise, the ladies are also doing extremely
Really?
well. I had no idea of this background. Agneta Faltstog, she's the blonde.
Yeah, okay.
She already had a very successful singing career where she was basically a teen pop star.
Oh.
She had a string of hits starting when she was 17 years old, and she had put out several albums. There were so many different little clips or pictures of her signing albums or meeting her fans.
Yeah.
She was a star. Like, it made me think of like a Britney Spears or something.
Okay.
Yeah. On the other hand, Annie Fried Lindstedt, who goes by Frida, Annie, A-N-N-I, that's where they got the A for the ABBA, but she goes by Frida. She's the one who most of the time had reddish hair.
Yes.
She was also a successful singer. She had also started singing when she was very young, but her big break came in 1967 when she won the Swedish national talent competition, New Faces, which allowed her to win this contract with a record company, EMI. So it was actually Benny Andersson, who would turn out to be her future fiancé, that was the producer for Frida's debut album, as a matter of fact. And it also gave her the opportunity to sing on the country's most popular television show at that time. From that point on, she's off and running, recording songs, and trying to make her own name.
Interesting.
So all four of these people had their own separate musical
That's
careers
fascinating.
and were successful before they ever hooked up with each other.
Do you realize, though, if she'd stayed by Frida, they'd have been fab?
I think that they played with some different combinations,
Yeah.
and that might have been one they
That
played
could have
with.
been.
Yeah, I think it was.
I think ABBA's the way to go, though.
Well, clearly it worked out pretty well for them. So let's talk about how the couples got together. Here is Bjorn sharing in that same 7 News Spotlight interview that I just mentioned how he and Agneta got together.
Guys in the band swear that I fell in love just by hearing her voice.
Is that true?
Yes, I think so. There was something, so incredibly attractive in that voice, even before I knew the girl.
Bjorn, who was in a folk band, met Agneta on a TV special.
We did a duet together. After that, we were very soon a couple.
I love that move where they're on the steps and they're like, and I'm here.
It looked like, I don't know, the Brady Bunch or
Yes,
something.
yes.
It just had this vibe. But could you see it? You could see her as that young pop star.
Yes.
She kind of had that Britney feel
She
to
did.
me. And gorgeous. They were all such good-looking people individually. So he said he fell in love with her right off the bat. You heard how they got together.
Mm-hmm.
Over on the other hand, this other couple, while Frida was busy with her own solo career, in 1969, she participated in the Melodifestivalen. I hope I said that
I am
correctly.
proud of you for
well,
trying
I tried.
that. That was good.
Just go into it with confidence.
Just go into it with confidence.
But they refer to that as the Swedish heats for the Eurovision Song Contest. We're going to pause and talk about that because this
Okay.
is going to be important in just a
Okay.
second, and you're going to see why. Okay, this is really cool. I was not familiar with the Eurovision Song Contest, which apparently
It's a thing.
continues to this day. Do you know much about
Nope,
it?
just that it's a thing.
Okay. Well, one music guru who was speaking about it in one of the ABBA documentaries called it the forerunner to American Idol. And this contest, I'm sure, is still huge, but it was really huge back then because what it does is it features competitors from many, many different countries. And if you win, obviously, you're going to get such exposure. It's going to be such a big deal. But in order to get there, it is so incredibly competitive. You have to go through all of these different screenings. And in Sweden, their final step is to make it through this Melodifestivalen contest. And if you're the winner of that, you get to represent Sweden in Eurovision.
Wow.
So Frida had made it to that level of the competition. This is 1969, remember? She sang the song that translates in English to Our Earth is Wonderful, and she finished in 4th place. But while she was backstage...
She really won the prize.
Well, yes, she did. While she was backstage, she ran into Benny Andersson, who was there because, again, he's in the music business. He was working with one of the other competitors, and not long after, the two of them were dating. So around 1969 to 1970, what you had was this situation where these two engaged couples are hanging out together all the time. They're all extremely talented musicians.
And
which,
extremely good looking.
yes, and they all know that they're talented musicians. They would help each other. It would be like, oh, you're working on this project? Sure, I'll do backups for you.
Oh, that's
I'll-
nice.
here, I can help you with that song. They were helping each other all the time, but none of them had thought, you know what? Why don't we form a band? And then they took kind of a stab at it in a strange sort of way in 1970 when they put together a cabaret act that they called Festfolk. Most of the sources said that the meaning of that term is party people, but on the ABBA site, it says it has a double meaning, that actually it means both party people and engaged couples.
Oh, that's cute.
Which, side note, that's something that was pointed out in different sources. In the 1970s, a lot of what was selling was trying to be very outlandish and spectacular, being a sex symbol, being an individual, kind of like...
So they're selling the couples.
They're selling the couples, which was
Interesting.
actually very different. They said that this was kind of a thing that made them stand out at the time. But anyway, this attempt to form this cabaret act did not go so well. When the reporter in that 7 News Spotlight asked Bjorn why he thought that was, he said, quote, "Because we were not doing what we were supposed to do. We were singing other people's songs in a kind of cabaret act." But he went on to say what came out of it that was good was the realization that, hey, we sound pretty good together. We could do something together, but we need to be doing our own stuff.
Interesting.
We need to write our own songs. So people consider 1972 to be the year that ABBA formed, although they did not call themselves ABBA at that time. They had that super catchy name, Bjorn and Benny, Agneta and Anna Fried.
Oh, yeah, I can say that.
Yeah, yes. And they actually had some success in the spring of 1972 with a song called People Need Love, which they referred to as a medium-sized hit in Sweden. By this point, by the way, Agneta and Bjorn are actually married. They married in July of 1971, although, because you're probably wondering, Benny and Frida would call themselves engaged but would not end up actually getting married until October of 1978.
Whoa.
Yeah, long time went
Yeah.
by. But back to the point. They are now performing together. They've put out a song. They're getting some popularity, but it's very confined. It's in Sweden. They wanted to be international hits. They wanted this broader exposure, so they entered the 1973 Melodifestivalen to try to qualify for the Eurovision Song Contest, and they used the song Ring Ring. According to the ABBA site, they finished third, but the single and the album by that same name were the biggest hits of the year in Sweden, competing for the top position on the charts. And Ring Ring also became a hit in several other European countries. So they're
breaking out. They're starting to break out of the mold.
Yes, but they aren't where they want to be. Both their manager and these 4 singers, they were going for it. They wanted this international fame, which is also, according to several documentaries I saw, one of the reasons why they decided to write and perform their songs in English, because they knew that would give
That's
them
smart.
a broader audience.
That's really smart.
Although that was harder for them.
Yeah.
Because that was not their native language.
Right. I think that's also the reason behind Celine Dion wanting the international. She was a French Canadian, and she had to learn to speak English to break through that. So that's determination. To
Yeah,
learn to
and it's
speak
so
another language.
impressive. And that was something that came out in one of the interviews, was that was a hard thing for Agneta later when they became so popular. She was not quite as comfortable with the English language as her other bandmates, and she's having to communicate and
speak
to
in
use
English.
it all the time.
Yeah.
And that's not an easy thing. By this point, they had also switched their band name to ABBA, which I will repeat this again. This is an acronym created from the first letter of each of their first names. So Agneta, Bjorn, Benny, and Annie Fried. And in 1974, they tried again to make it into the 1974 Eurovision Song Contest. This time, they made it through. They were the representatives who got to
Is
go
that the
there.
50th? Is that where we're...
Yes. So the competition was so tough. In fact, Olivia Newton-John was one of their competitors representing the UK.
Representing the UK, I guess Australia is
They let her. ABBA, they just stood out. They took a chance by going
They took
against...
a chance on this. Take a chance on us. We're gonna win. Sorry.
But they went against all the norms,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Most of the people who were competing would sing songs in a certain style. They would be either ballads or these dramatic songs that would have like a lot of pomp to them, like boom, 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 boom kind of thing. And they went a totally different direction. In fact, just to throw this out there, I watched the video of Olivia Newton-John when she was performing her song, and she was wearing this full-length, flowy
bet it was
dress.
beautiful.
She looked gorgeous. And she had backup singers who were also wearing these flowy dresses, but she looked like she could have been a bridesmaid in a wedding.
Wow.
And then ABBA comes out.
Comes sauntering out.
And they are wearing...
Jumpsuits? Please say jumpsuits.
Well, not jumpsuits.
Oh.
The pictures are I've got several in the show notes.
Okay.
So take a look. But it was, we had tall boots that were kind of
Go-go boots?
shiny. Yes.
Okay.
Stacked heels and like shiny kind of silver.
Yeah.
We had the little, I don't know what to call it, like kind of a beanie style hat on top of Agneta's head. And then we had blue satin and tight pants. And I mean,
They
just,
did not come to play.
right.
They came to win.
Yes. It was, they were going for it. And instead of the normal type song, they brought out Waterloo.
Waterloo, something, something, something I want to do. That is so catchy.
It is
It's
so catchy. It is so catchy. And I should have said this earlier. One of the requirements is that you have to sing something original.
Oh.
So this is them debuting this song that nobody's ever heard before. And they came out with Waterloo, which is also, I mean, if you were going for a really safe song, it's also not the safest song you could pick, right? They went for it. And as a Rolling Stone article noted, quote, Waterloo not only won the prize, it won ABBA global fame. It became their first American hit, crashing the top 10. They performed on the 5th episode of a new American TV show called Saturday Night Live.
Here we are, back to them.
Lip syncing Waterloo on board the Titanic. I
Or
read
the
this.
Titanic.
Okay.
Oh, that's awful.
It is awful, but
That's
I'm going to tell
awful.
you that I searched high and low.
You can't
and
find it?
Nope. I found one little YouTube clip that was just a clip. And sure enough, because I'd read this Rolling Stone description, I was like, oh yeah, that is what's happening. I'm seeing the members of ABBA while that was the setup of the skit. They're
Yeah.
standing at the front, and you see people sitting supposedly around little tables in this. And
That's
what was.
horrible.
I know.
That's horrible.
I know. But
SNL.
But setting that aside,
Yeah.
they made it on SNL.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So there is a page dedicated to ABBA on the Eurovision website to this day.
I bet. They're like, we did it. We did this. We did this. It's us. Come to be in our competition. You could be the next ABBA.
Right? Well, here are the first and final paragraphs. ABBA was formed in Stockholm in 1972. They became one of the most commercially successful acts in the history of pop music, topping the charts worldwide from 1972 to 1982. ABBA sold over 375 million records worldwide. Side note, I've seen other sources that said it's more like 400 million.
It's a lot.
But yeah, it's a lot. Now moving to their final paragraph. ABBA's music has bridged many generation gaps over the years, and Waterloo is widely regarded as the best song to ever win the Eurovision Song Contest amongst many a fan and viewer alike.
Interesting.
50 years
50 years
later,
and you can't top it. That's amazing.
that is such a tribute to them. Yeah. But despite the little flash of instant success that followed up on their win, Bjorn spoke in that same Spotlight News interview about how they actually kind of struggled after that to still break through to the big time. He comments that they chose the wrong song, Honey Honey, as a follow-up.
That's a fun- honey, honey. I don't know. I can only think of the titles. Keep going.
Well, and they had a few other ones, but they weren't hitting it big. And he says, we have our Australian friends to thank for the fact that we came back and actually broke through. So according to the ABBA website again, quote, it wasn't until some 18 months later that they got a major worldwide hit again with SOS, taken off their third album, simply entitled ABBA. Mamma Mia, also from the ABBA album, returned the group to the UK #1 spot, which they occupied a total of 9 times between 1974 and 1980. Mamma Mia was #1 for 10 weeks in Australia, which was the first territory to release it as a single. Over the next couple of years, Australia would be caught up in a virtual ABBA fever, giving the group a total of 6 #1 hits. Australia was a big thing for them. They compliment them to this day. Benny commented in a separate interview that it was because of Australia's response that the UK picked them up, and then suddenly they were in the charts. Now, of course, they were also doing their part by putting out a bunch of fabulous songs. For example, Fernando, Dancing Queen, Money, 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 and Knowing Me, Knowing You all came out in 1976.
That's a lot.
And Dancing Queen was the song they acknowledged that really, really solidified ABBA as this just mega star band. And it hit #1, they said, on charts around the world. So we've talked a little bit about how they came to be and their rise to fame. Let's take a brief break. And when we come back, we'll talk about the parts that are not quite so happy.
The downward slope. Does your mother know that you listen to Scandal Water? Why not?
If the winner takes it all, then we have a dream that season 4 of Scandal Water will be our most enriching and successful yet, and we're hoping there are no breakups in our future.
So we're sending out an SOS. If you're a Scandal Water fan, the best way you can help us is by encouraging others to take a chance on us.
Please take a few minutes today to subscribe to Scandal Water on a podcast app or our YouTube channel. Share one of our social media posts, tell a friend about the show, or write a 5-star review.
Don't let this opportunity slip through your fingers to support your 2 favorite tea-sipping dancing queens. Cheers!
And we are back. Everything we've shared, I think, has sounded pretty positive and upbeat, but things were not perfect, right? I mean, we know that. So I want to address a few of the points that people bring up all the time about the band, or even a few of the rumors that
I
you
really
will
don't know
often
why
hear.
they broke up.
Oh, okay. Well, you're about to be interested, but first a little bit of some other context.
Okay.
So one thing that people talk about a lot, this is one of those little, I don't know what you would call it. Rumor's not the right word, but a lot of people make something of this supposed rivalry between the 2 female lead singers. Agneta actually addressed that in the same interview that we've mentioned now several times. She took a positive slant. She talked about the fact that they actually did compete with each other, but that it pushed them. She called it a healthy competition because she said they knew they were sex symbols, so they did try to play to the audience because that's
Well,
what
they
you
were
did.
both individually successful, so they knew the game.
Right. And so she said they would compete, they would push each other to do their best. So she called it healthy. But other people did talk about things like the tension over who got the lead in the most songs, which was Agneta. Like if you just look at the data, you will see that she got spotlighted in more songs. And with these 2 women being so accomplished with their own solo careers, their own success, that seemed to be something that maybe didn't sit as well
little friction.
sometimes. Yeah. Supposedly, one of the pat responses that Benny and maybe Bjorn said as well was, oh, we just choose the right singer for the song every time. But,
It's working.
Well, true. The other thing that might have caused a little friction was, this is just a sign of the times, I think, but this came up across numerous interviews. Apparently, I think it was in Australia, that some publicity came out saying that the fans had noted that Agneta had a sexy bottom, that she was like the star who had the sexiest bottom. And they would literally ask Agneta about this in interviews.
Oh, that's awful.
This would come up. But again, here's Frida, who's not getting that same kind of attention. So there was that. Little tension supposedly between the women.
That's weird.
Yeah, odd. Now, another point. This one's just fun.
Okay.
The costumes.
Yeah.
Fun but interesting. I saw a few different sources that noted the same thing. One of them being a Smithsonian article, another being a site called This Day in Music. They both said that, sure, the crazy costumes, the over-the-top costumes, that was partly for spectacle, just because that's what you do to put on a good show. But they also said it was an easy way to save money on the tax bill in Sweden. They were exploiting a Swedish law that said clothes were tax deductible if the owners could prove that they were not used for daily wear. So by making them so crazy, that made
They
it
got to write off their clothes.
It was a tax loophole.
Oh, that's funny.
So fun fact. Parenthood. Parenthood comes up a lot when you talk about this group that's comprised of 2 different couples.
Sure.
Bjorn and Agneta, we said, were married in 1971. They had their first child, Linda, in 1973. And then they had a son, Peter Christian, who they called Christian, who was born in 1977. And in different interviews, this was brought up as being something that was very, very difficult, managing being a
Yeah.
pop superstar while
Yeah.
also being parents, especially on Agneta. She seemed to be the one who spoke most about the challenges. For example, there was a whole article I saw that talked about how upset she was, and I'm sure Bjorn was too, when they came home from a tour one time and their very young daughter didn't recognize them at first.
Oh, that's sad.
And then they talked about, Agneta was always very, very, very fearful of flying.
Yeah.
Always. But then when they had young children, they were afraid of flying together in case, God forbid,
Yes.
something awful
Yes,
happened.
yes.
So now she would often be flying alone, or he might be, but it sounded like a lot of times it might be her. That was very, very difficult. And then she shared in an interview just an anecdote. Here's another example of how it affected her. She said that one of her biggest memories of the song Thank You for the Music is that she was very, very pregnant at the time, and she had been told she needed to make sure she wasn't pushing. And when you sing, she's the one who sang so high, and she said when you sing really high, your body might react in certain ways. She remembers being reclined in a chair almost to the point of laying down in the studio singing that song.
That is an amazing voice.
I know, while she is that pregnant.
Wow.
This is a thing, and by the way, we'll come back to this later, but it's also something that people will point to as to why they might have ultimately broke up, like how difficult it might have been, this issue of she's feeling conflicted over the children, but the band is wanting to continue on, and what kind of tension did that cause? Now, Benny and Frida did not get married, we said, until 1978, and they actually did not end up having any children together. Now, both had been married prior and had children from their previous marriages, but I found one source that definitively said that Benny's first wife did get custody of their children. I could never find anything that said whether Frida had custody of her children with her first husband. I never saw that, but I do know she loved her children dearly.
Of course.
And, in fact, tragically, her daughter would end up passing away, and I think it was a car accident when she was 30, and Frida was devastated.
Yeah.
But I don't know how much the children
Were in her life at that time.
Yeah, exactly.
At this touring time.
Right. Now, this is interesting. ABBA music took so many hits from certain music critics. They took a lot of criticism. Some people would call it Muzak.
Because it's too popcorny?
Yep. Some people called it too simplistic. Now, Bjorn has said it never bothered him or any of the other bandmates because they had millions upon millions of fans who enjoyed it as much as they did, it seemed, and so they could live with that.
It's like the phrase, what is it, 10,000 Elvis fans can't be wrong?
Right.
Or 100,000 or whatever it is.
Right. But I found this really interesting. In one documentary, they had a lot of sound bites from people who were involved in the music industry and had even worked with ABBA. And this one fella, I did not catch his name, sorry about that, but he said something that I thought was insightful. He pointed out, remember we said they were writing in English. And he said when they first started writing songs in particular, this was a challenge. They hadn't become adept at writing in English yet. And so a lot of times their songs would have a lot of repetition, and you might have honey, honey, ring, ring, a lot of repetition because
They're still learning the language.
Yes, they're still getting their feet under them. And also there was a lot of praise for the crafts of their composing music and their craftsmanship in putting it together. They said that the fellas generally ended up being the ones who did the composing and writing the lyrics, even though I know for a fact Agneta, but prior to coming into ABBA, she had done a lot of her own composing. So she had that skill, but she kind of left it to the fellas. So they said that the fellas were very, very particular. Like they would work on a song, and if it did not meet their expectations, they would just be like, well, we're not going to use that. So yeah, there was a lot of commentary about the fact that these were skilled musicians. These songs might have had a lot of repetition, but they were very catchy. And as the band evolved and experimented with new things, they also did come out with songs that were a lot more complex. Yeah. Now, just to get a little bit more technical, the Smithsonian article that I think I've mentioned already praised ABBA's unique and highly crafted music by saying, quote, preceded by Phil Spector's wall of sound philosophy, which layered vocals and instrumentals to produce a fuller, deeper sensation, ABBA's sound was clearly influenced by the Beatles and the growing glam rock scene in the UK. These people knew what they were doing. In the CBS Sunday Morning interview, the host asked Benny to tell him the ingredients for a good pop song, and his first response was, I think a pop song should have something that you don't expect it to have. And in that same video clip that I've already mentioned several times, they went out with Benny to see the site where a lot of the music was composed. I'm going to let you hear this briefly.
I've come to Sweden and caught a ride on Benny's old motor cruiser to a place that's very special to the group. This is where much of the music of ABBA was created. In a hut on a tiny island called Vigsa in Stockholm's archipelago.
Agneta and I had bought a place there, and later Benny and Frida did. In the early morning I used to hear sounds of someone playing piano up there, and I knew Benny had arrived. So I used to make a pot of coffee, take my guitar and walk up there, and then we'd sit there, the whole day long and write away. The verse didn't come at the same time as the bridge, or the chorus might have come before everything else. They came in bits and pieces, and then they would click together, and you would have a song.
Little tiny cabin.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
First of all, I loved hearing that little background on
Yes.
how they created their music. But then I thought that was so telling to think about these two couples who were touring together, living together in a studio, living together on a bus, living together on a stage, and they're also living right beside each other on this little private
Yep.
island
Yep.
composing their. I was like, whoa, when did they have any time apart?
I don't think that they did.
It didn't sound
After
like
they
it.
broke up.
Well, yeah. Very interesting. One last little comment I'll make. I just thought it was cute. Bjorn shared that he got the idea for Take a Chance on Me while he was running. He said that as he was running, it wasn't the lyrics.
rhythm?
Yes. He started hearing the
Yep.
and he said that's what led to it.
That's so cool. It also makes me wonder, in the Mamma Mia movie, I think he had a cameo on a boat playing the piano. I wonder if that was his boat.
Oh, it might have been. I think both Benny and Bjorn
Oh, were they both?
had cameos in the movies. I think that was something that they wanted to do.
Well, yeah, I would too.
Well, sure.
My stuff.
The divorces. Okay. Well, the first split came in 1979 when Bjorn and Agneta divorced.
The other two had just gotten married.
Uh-huh.
Oh,
Yes.
that's a big whoops.
Yeah. As noted on the ABBA website, this did not mean the end of ABBA, but it did overthrow their image of two happy
Yeah.
music-making couples. So, according to a Smooth Radio article, Agneta wrote in her 1997 book, As I Am, quote, "We always told the media that it was a happy divorce, which of course was a front. Obviously, we all know there are no such
Yeah.
things as happy divorces, especially when there are children
Yeah.
involved." I dug so hard to try to find definitive
The why.
yes, the factors or, the reasons. I never could find that. But what I did find were certain things that were mentioned over and over again.
Okay.
So I'm going to share those with you.
Okay.
Okay. I saw quotes from bandmates about growing apart. I saw multiple sources that mentioned the stress caused by touring and how hard it was for Agneta in particular to be away from
the
her
kids.
children. I also saw several sources that very pointedly said that Bjorn had a girlfriend within a week after the divorce, and he was married to music journalist Lena Kallershow, if I said that correctly, on January 6th, 1981, which was 6 months after the divorce was finalized. And something that did come out, Agneta admitted, I'm not sure when she admitted this, but she did admit that she was mangled by the breakup and that she did end up needing counseling. This was such a traumatic thing for her. And in the 1970s, that was not as common a thing for
No,
people to
yeah,
talk about.
yeah.
So it was an indication of how much this did affect her. Now, this was interesting. The Smithsonian article pointed this out, and I went and had to look at it, okay? Just 2 weeks after Agneta and Bjorn announced around Christmas of 1978 that they were divorcing, the band had to perform their new song, Chiquitita, for this UNICEF concert.
Yeah.
And the Smithsonian comments, it's a heart-wrenching performance elevated by the real pain going on behind the scenes. As Chris Patrick, who wrote ABBA Let the Music Speak, explains, if you look at the opening shot of Agneta singing Chiquitita, Tell Me What's Wrong, you're enchained by your own sorrow. And you look at Frida, she's in the back of the frame and she's looking on with this amazing, you can do it, girl expression. You can do it. You've got to push through. I went and found that video and watched it, and I did. I saw Frida's face behind her that
Just giving her strength.
Yes, and it got me. It really did. Just to quickly follow up on that, I found this interesting. I found it sweet, actually. ABBA was one of the many artists who did perform at that UNICEF concert. Others were Donna Summer, the Bee Gees, Earth, Wind and Fire, just lots of people. And ABBA made the decision to donate the royalties from that new song, Chiquitita, which is now recognized as one of their big hits, to the charity, and it has raised over $5 million for UNICEF now.
Wow.
So I thought that was cool. But The band did stay together after their divorce, and in fact, they created some of their most popular music, including the song The Winner Takes It All.
Oh, that song. The Winner Takes It All. I remember that scene in Mamma Mia where Meryl Streep is singing that. That's a heart-wrenching song.
It really is. It's so powerful. And it's Agneta who sings it. It's Agneta who sings it. So a 2024 People magazine article tells the story of how Bjorn came in, presented the lyrics for the song one day in the studio back in 1980, and how the band instantly connected to it. Of course, at this time, Bjorn and Agneta had just recently divorced. And
He's recently gotten married.
well, they're also already struggling. We'll get to that in a minute. But Benny and Frida were separated by
And they hadn't been married that
1980.
long. 2 years.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, they've
so-
been together forever, but
But reflecting on this, Bjorn said later, going through divorce is difficult as anyone would know who's done it. That was, of course, taking up my thoughts, but there was not one winner in the case of us. So Agneta, again, she had to sing lead on this really emotional song that was autobiographical about this wound that is still so raw. You would think that she would have hated it, like
I
her
bet it was
ex-husband
kind of
is.
freeing, though.
You called it. You
Yeah.
called it. She said it was fantastic to do that song because I could put in such feeling.
Yeah.
I didn't mind sharing it with the public. It didn't feel wrong. There is so much in that song. It was a mixture of what I felt and what Bjorn felt, but also what Benny and Frida went through. So that song, The Winner Takes It All, was featured on their very successful Super Trooper album in 1980, one of their most beloved hits. And Agneta said in an interview just a few years ago that it is her favorite ABBA
bet.
song. And Bjorn said when he was asked about it just in the last few years that rather than being painful, he thought it was cleansing. And that by singing about it in some way, they were able to release some of those really, really difficult feelings. So Benny and Frida, as we've already said, they separated in late 1980 and they divorced in early 1981, and it was reportedly much messier than the other
Your
divorce.
face was saying it was.
Yeah. Benny had taken up with a Swedish TV personality named Mona Norklit, who he married just after the divorce was finalized.
Both the boys did that.
Yeah. And Benny and Mona then had a son, Ludwig, in early 1982. And this couple, by the way, is still together today.
Okay.
But the band went on. And they also put on their little brave front. They were telling the world that these splits were amicable and it was a happy divorce. But all was not well, as I think you can tell when you watch an appearance they made on the Late Late Breakfast Show in November of 1982 to celebrate 10 years since they had formed their group. Because remember, technically, 72. I'm going to ask you to watch this.
Uh-oh.
Because as I'm not all of it, just
Yeah.
little pieces of it. I'm going to ask you what you notice.
Okay, I'm going to be sipping my tea.
Oh, you are.
'Cause they gonna be spilling it.
You are. And listen to the words carefully too. Watch them and listen.
Well, I find it difficult really to believe it's 10 years that you're celebrating now.
Yeah, 10 years older.
Yes. What an amazing success story. Who has guided you over those 10 years? Who's guided you along this success path?
We've guided ourselves, I should like to think. Most of the time, anyway. With the help from other people as well. Mainly, maybe our manager, Stig Anderson.
Yeah.
It's been very important to us.
And the papers recently have been full of stories that you're going to split eventually.
We are.
You're not? No. Well, they're obviously relieved to hear it. I was just going to ask you if that ever occurred to you and who would make the decision. I mean, would it be a joint decision?
It would, yeah. We would decide that together. It would be more of a feeling, I think, because when we were recording an album, we would feel that it's not fun anymore. We haven't got anything more to give. And that would be the time to split, you know.
You should have done that a long time ago then.
I know.
What did you notice?
Well, the ladies looked like their faces were like, I don't want to be here.
I know.
Firstly, and if you're going just on body language, I can't remember who was who. So who's the one on the furthest?
That's Bjorn.
Bjorn and Benny are
Yes.
next to each other.
Yes.
Benny is completely closed off.
100%.
Arms crossed.
He never uncrosses them the entire rest of the interview.
Ooh, he does not want to be there. And I noticed that the two men's feet are touching almost like, okay, I'm here with you. But the ladies' feet are crossed away from the guys. And is it the two, who are the two on the very end are like, we're not even sitting together.
That's Bjorn and Agneta,
Okay.
the first couple that
and
divorced.
So the more
And-
contentious ones were next to each other, which is probably why they were like, I don't want to be here.
And she had her hands, Frida
Away from
has her
him.
hands folded, and they're folded together, clasped on the opposite
Yes.
side of her body, away
Yes,
from him.
away from him.
Did you hear when the host asked something about the rumor of them splitting up, and Bjorn immediately says, "Not
No,
true,
no, not true.
Yeah, not true." And then that little, how will we know when it's no fun anymore?
And then the other one said that should have been a long time ago.
Yes, he made that
We should have
joke.
done that a long time ago.
That's
Hello?
significant.
Yeah.
You know what? Let's save that until after the next clip, and then we'll talk about why that's significant. So now I'm going to play one more small, short little clip from the same interview. What has happened is the host has asked each of the bandmates to tell their favorite ABBA song, and every time they say one of them, he plays a little clip from it, and the
Okay.
audience goes wild.
Of course,
Okay.
yes.
So at this point that I'm picking up, it's on Frida, and Jetta has already shared hers, Fernando, and he's asking Frida to share hers.
Okay.
Are you asking me?
Yes, it's your turn
Yes,
now.
it's really.
She's getting old, isn't she?
It's so noisy
hearing
here,
is
you know.
getting-
No, it's really a difficult decision because I mean Ben and Bjorn has written so many good songs.
Thank you.
and
Thank you.
Yes, but you should know about that by now.
Well, you never said that.
Okay, so it's the first time.
What would you like to choose?
Did you catch that?
The audience did too. They went, oh.
Yeah.
That was a little uncomfortable.
So she said it's hard. I don't know if you could catch all that. She said it's hard because Benny and Bjorn have written so many good songs. They both say thank you. And she says, well, you should know that by now. And he says,
Well, you've never said that.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's the first time.
And
And I also
watching
noticed
it-
the two girls. She is almost in her lap. Like she is just. They are a front, and the men their body language is more open. But the two girls are like, we're together on this end of the couch, and yes, we are a team.
You know, you bring up an interesting point. I don't know if we've said this yet. From the time that Bjorn and Benny first met, it really seemed like they were always best friends and the tightest of collaborative partners. And so even after the band breaks up, these two go on working together basically for the rest of their life. I mean, they're still working together today, I think. They are very, very tight and united. And I feel like part of what we're seeing is that. And also, I don't know if this was just how the band dynamics worked or if maybe they were the leaders and the ladies just kind of deferred to them. But did you see when they asked about the band breaking up, the two men answer and the two women just sit there and look over at them like, what are they going to say? You
I did
know?
notice that they both looked at them like, well,
So I'm not sure if they had more power in the decision making in that group or if it was just in this particular
We're gonna
situation.
let you talk for
right,
us.
we'll let you talk. But there was definitely, yes, there was a lot going on. So here's the interesting thing. This little interview takes place in November of 1982, and they break up basically a month later.
well, you said at the top that they were only together till 82, and if we're in November, there's not much left.
Yeah. According to the ABBA website, through the course of 1982, the energy was gradually running out of the group as Bjorn and Benny set their sights on writing the musical Chess, and Agneta and Frida were reviving their solo careers. So basically, they started going their separate ways. I will say some of the backstory, it sounded as though it had just gotten so tense. They were
Well,
trying...
they're together all the
Right.
time.
And they were trying to create new stuff and it wasn't going well. Like they had it in their heads. They were going to be putting out new music and they had gone into the studio. They couldn't find, they couldn't get anything of quality that they wanted. It just, I think the feel was just terrible. And so when they tried again in December, they were just like, you know what, we need to go on a break. And to this day, I believe it's Bjorn who will say, we never broke up.
We're on a break.
We've been on a break. We've been on a break. In the 15 or so years after that, their music, of course, is still out there and people still like ABBA, but they're not putting out new stuff, right? They're
So it's kind of
fading.
falling away.
Yeah, they're falling away until certain things happened, such as Muriel's wedding. Which revived interest. There were other things too, but that's
Yeah.
one of them that's given credit for reviving interest in ABBA and even helping to lead to the rise of some tribute bands. And then came the 1999 musical, Mamma
Mamma Mia.
which, according to the Biography Channel documentary that I saw, was the first time a narrative was attempted using...
Like a jukebox musical?
Yes, using one band's existing pop songs. And different places they'll tell the backstory. The fellas, Bjorn Bjorn and Benny were not on board at first.
Really?
They did not think this was going to work.
Wow.
And then as they continued to talk to the producer, they got behind it, although they made the provision, you can never change any of the lyrics. You cannot make changes to the lyrics. If you think you can create a great show with certain, these parameters in mind,
Go for it.
try it, right? So if you look at the title, it does read Benny Andersson and Bjorn Ulvaeus's Mamma Mia, the smash hit musical based on the songs of ABBA. Their name is on it. They are involved in some way. I know it talked about on the website put out by the creative producer of Mamma Mia. She gives a little bit of the backstory, and she talks about getting the approval from the fellas, having their creative input. So they were involved. I just don't know exactly how much. I'm sure they're making some good money.
Yeah.
Yeah. But through all of this, that play, then the movie, then the sequel, Mamma Mia, I think the first one was
Here we go again.
2008. Yep, the sequel was 2018, both hugely successful, but the band never reunited. In 2008, Bjorn said to the Sunday Telegraph, "We will never appear on stage again. There is simply no motivation to regroup." And then
they did.
And then they did.
Sort of.
After almost 40 years, the band released an album in 2021 called Voyage, for which they did get together and create and perform new music.
That's incredible.
And then have you heard about the virtual concert?
That's what I was talking about.
Yeah. Okay, so they put out this album.
Okay, I didn't know that the album existed.
They're
Yes.
in alignment with each other. They were in, what's the word? They were correlated to each other, but they were also two separate things too. This virtual concert, it's a project that came out in 2022.
They built a whole stadium for it.
Yes, they did. And they created avatars, which they
Yes.
call avatars.
That's adorable.
Using them, they had to do all kinds of
Motion capture.
Yes, and they used some of the new Voyage songs along with a ton of their best hits.
I would totally go see it.
Oh, I would too. But it plays in the ABBA Arena in London. So according to Wikipedia, the digital ABBAs were created in collaboration with legendary VFX company Industrial Light and Magic.
George Lucas.
Yep. Following weeks and months of motion capture and performance techniques with the 4 band members and an 850-strong team in what is the company's first foray into music.
It is an incredible technological achievement.
Unbelievable. And just watching the video
And don't they make
clips
them
of
look
it,
younger, even though it's their
Yes.
older bodies
Yes.
doing the motion capture? They made them look like at the height of their popularity, right?
Yes,
That's what I
they
thought.
basically put their faces on. It's a live band. They have a
Yeah.
live band there.
Yeah.
Yes. And their bodies are not the bodies they have now as
Yeah.
70 years old. They kind of tweaked that too, but they use their actual movements and things.
That's
I
incredible.
Love it.
They've done that with Elvis before, where they've had the video footage of Elvis performing, but they've taken away the sound and they have live orchestras, but he's up on film. This is the first time I've seen where they have put the people, the holograms or whatever they are, avatars, in front of it. And people go. I would go.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. It would be a great time. Well, I thought I would end with a quick where are they now? This is not comprehensive. I'm not giving you all the details. I'm hitting a couple of highlights. We've already mentioned Benny. He is still with the same woman he married after he divorced Frida, Mona Norclett, and they do have their son, Ludwig, who actually helped produce the ABBA Voyage virtual concert.
Cool.
Frida was married to her third husband, Prince Heinrich Russo-Roos, Count of Plauen, from 1992 until he died in 1999.
Aw.
So she actually has some kind of a title. And we've already said that very tragically her daughter died of a car accident. I think it was actually maybe the year before her husband died. I'm not sure about that.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah.
That's a double.
I wasn't able to find this. I remember some kind of reference in passing that she had another relationship after that, but I've not been able to find it, so don't hold me to that.
Okay.
Bjorn married his second wife, Lena Kalershow, and they had 2 children together. And then in 2022, after 41 years of marriage, they announced they were going to divorce but remain friends.
Oh, wow.
And around 5 months after the divorce, he appeared in public with his new girlfriend, who was 28 years younger, also somehow in the music business. Now, I tried to find out what's going on in 2024 with that
Yeah.
relationship, could not find anything. So I don't know if they're still dating or if he's with somebody else, but that was the
That was
situation
then.
a couple years years ago. Agneta, she's had some sadness in her life. Her second marriage was in 1990 to a Swedish surgeon named Thomas Sonnenfeld, and it was held privately. In fact, a lot of sources said it was so private that it only became public knowledge when they divorced in 1993.
Wow.
And then she started a relationship in 1997 with this fella who ended up becoming a stalker of her. And she had to, after 2 years, she had to get a court order, or a restraining order is what I should call it, and he was deported to the Netherlands, but then came back a few years later and was arrested. It was a whole thing. So my understanding is the latest word on it is that he is banned from entering Sweden.
Wow.
So Agneta's reputation, which she addressed at one point in one of the interviews, she said a lot of people refer to her as reclusive, or they'll talk about her, disappearing from public life. And she commented, people don't understand her. She's not a reclusive type person. They just don't understand her life. They don't know about what she's lived through, that she's not that way. She also did make the comment that she felt like she took some blame for the split.
Yeah, because they were the first to break up.
Right. And she said also that wasn't the case, that she reiterated what had been said before. This was a situation where four people grew apart. And they had different goals.
Back when they broke up, I had always heard that the women didn't even want to be in the same room with the guys. Like, it had gotten to that point.
Well, I mean, I didn't see that, but I could see where
it was that
there would be some tension, based on the situation. Now, what was interesting when Bjorn and Benny were asked on the CBS Sunday Morning interview how difficult it was to continue on in the band after both their divorces, Benny immediately said, not professionally, not in the studio, not when we were working. Like, it wasn't hard at all. And Bjorn was over there nodding, and I was thinking,
really, guys? Not for you.
Well, it was also interesting, too, the way he had to qualify it. Not in the studio.
Yeah.
Not professionally.
Yeah.
Not when we were working. Well, there's a lot of time
where you're not
in the studio
and you're not
on stage. Yeah.
Armchair Psychologist.
So that brings us to the end. We're at our armchair, actually.
Okay.
So this information was so new to me. My knowledge of ABBA, I think, was so superficial and really revolved around this group that I saw in my mind as always singing these earworms, these really happy, peppy songs, perpetually happy. So this research really just gave me so much to think about. So I'm just going to ask you for the armchair just to react. Just what are a couple of the thoughts that are going through your mind?
I'm going back to The Winner Takes It All, and it being her favorite song. I mean, she said Fernando early on, but then she switched it to The Winner Takes It All. I don't know if they'd already recorded that song by the time that question was asked.
They had.
Okay. I wonder if part of the reason for its success is the emotion that got poured into it. And I wonder if that is part of their success overall, is they put everything into their music, into their art, into this, that it almost left. So we had this amazing music, but then it left no time for them to be people on their own. They channeled all of their energy and all of their emotion into their work. Where was it's all dried up? Because you and I are both performers in a different way. But when you go and you perform on stage, you come home and you're drained.
You give it all.
You give everything to that performance, and it's hard. You have to come home, you recover. You're still kind of hepped up from the performance, and it's hard, I would assume, to be in a household of children who are like, I just want mom, I just want dad to be here. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here, but I would think that they poured everything into the music. She poured everything into that song. So we are feeling that emotion. It's touching us, but they paid the price in their home lives.
Yeah. On the flip side, I purposely made myself, I was like, what is the upside of this? If you are going to sacrifice that much, if you're going to dedicate that much of yourself and your life to this project that you share with these other people, how affirming it must be that 50 years later, you are adored. You are that popular. People still love you. I think one of the fellas commented that a day didn't go by that somebody didn't walk up and say, thank you for the music. And one of the fellows also commented, you hear the name ABBA as much in the last 20 years as you did in our first 20 years.
That's incredible.
That is
longevity.
incredible. I always feel so sympathetic, because this is a recurring theme with us. I feel so sympathetic about the personal toll that it takes on people's lives. And we get to see that firsthand. Right, the price of fame. But I do applaud them. For them to get dismissed as this is Muzak, this is so simplistic, this is just fluff, and their music is adored and applauded and just, given so much love 50 years later. Kudos to you, ABBA.
That's
I
right.
mean, you know what? Let's end with that.
Thank you for the music, ABBA.
Thank you for the music, and kudos to you.
Cheers.
Cheers. If you love what we do, please rate and review our show. Or you can become a supporter by making a donation through buymeacoffee.com/scandalwaterpod. Whether a single gift or a recurring monthly donation, it would go a long way towards supporting our work and allowing us to keep the tea brewing.
At our website, www.scandalwaterpodcast.com, you can submit questions or your own story ideas, access our sources and show notes, see the merch we offer for sale, and more. You can join the Scandal Water community through our Scandal Water Podcast Facebook page or follow us on Instagram or TikTok at Scandal Water Podcast.
This episode was executive produced by Candy Thomas, that's me, and Ashley Raymer Brown.
That's me.
It was researched and written by Candy Thomas and edited by Ashley Raymer Brown.
A special thank you to Josh Martin, who wrote, composed, and performed the Scandal Water theme and other music, Matt C. Adams, who created the artwork, and Joshua Reith, who designed our website and provides ongoing technical support.
As a reminder, this podcast is purely for entertainment purposes. The thoughts and opinions of the host during each episode of Scandal Water are their own and do not reflect the opinions of any future guests, advertisers, or clearly professional psychologists. Thanks for listening.